Disclaimer: the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Functional Code, episode 1. I am Dr. Addy.
Dr. Jace.
And we are ready for episode 1. Doc, we got a lot of fun stuff ready here today. Upgrading
Absolutely.
your life. It's resolution time. Beginning of the year. Habits, resolutions. We are ready to hit that. I think a lot of people out there are excited. I know we're excited, especially when we're seeing people day to day coming into the office and they are ready to change for the new year for the better. And Doc, I know when we're going to take a look here shortly at some of the resolutions for 2024, these aren't old. These kind of come up every year, and I think for most people these resolutions are pretty similar. So we have here to start off the podcast the top 10 resolutions.
Top 10.
Top 10 resolutions for the new year's. Number 1, improving fitness. I don't think that's any surprise. I think a lot of people are out there already. I was in the gym the other day. The gym was packed. People are ready to make changes. I think that's great. The goal, though, is to continue to try and keep them.
Yes.
Number 2, improve your finances. Number 3, improve your mental health. That's very important. I think that's a beautiful one. Number 4 is lose weight. Improve diet is number 5. I think those two obviously go hand in hand. Number 6, make more time for loved ones, which is crucial. Number 6 is stop smoking. Number 7 is learning a new skill. Number 8, make more time for hobbies. Number 9 is improve work-life balance. And number 10 is travel more. So
Beautiful.
Obviously, these are all great. And I think, Doc, I know in your experience, as you and I have both gone through rigorous, medical school and just all of the things that we have needed to create new habits and maybe change routine and schedules just so that we can keep up with our loved ones during that process. What are some of your experiences with these kinds of habits, maybe resolutions, and has this ever been you at one point in life?
Almost every year it feels like. I think over time you kind of see what works well for you, what doesn't. I know in the past for me, just speaking on like the top few of these between fitness and even just mental health. But when I look at my past history of like habits, a lot of it stemmed when I was earlier in life. At the beginning of the year, the New Year's resolution, everyone had it. We had stuff in grade school. We touched on it. There was projects, whatnot with that. I think once you start looking at some of the barriers, and we'll probably get into like some of the deeper literature with this and the reasons why and the mechanisms, tools, it'll make more sense. For me, I started tapering out a few months in after starting. Or it changed based on what my goal was or resolution was. So just speaking on just even the fitness aspect with that, for me, it was more maintaining. It was trying to stay a consistent schedule, and then other things kind of came in the way. So the New Year's resolution didn't work the best. It worked better for me starting at a random time in the year.
Totally.
And then from there, kind of pretty much built up, and those are a lot of the ones I kept maintaining. For you, what's your experience?
Absolutely, and I like that you brought that up because I was so similar. And actually, it just happened to me no less than 30 days ago when I was thinking about things I wanted to change for the new year, and I had the same idea of, okay, what do I want to put in my goal book for the year coming up into 2024? And I said, how I've always done this is I'm not going to wait because I just want to see if I can't get a start on it. Once 2024 hits, then I can roll into it versus starting right away Jan 1. So I love that you said that because that's exactly how I do it with myself if I'm ready to make a different change. So background, I've always been a lean person. I have trouble gaining weight, so fitness, diet, just like you mentioned, all of these have been on my goals at one point in time and still are. Fitness is going to be a huge one for me, making sure that I continue to stay in that gym as often as I can. And I know that it's going to help improve the goals that I have set for, putting on muscle, but mental health too, because I know that as things continue, I continue to strive in life. I only spread myself more thin, and so I got to protect myself and keep the stress down, and staying in the gym is going to be crucial for that.
So transitioning into not only from our goals, but also to, as physicians, we see patients have a lot of different avenues in which they find themselves in terms of tendencies and trying to build a new habit. So oftentimes when patients come in and see us, most of the time they're in pain. Sometimes they just want to work on certain aspects of function or lack thereof. So starting off with and building their routines, I think what we've noticed, if we don't have the education behind it, that's where most of the time they're going to lose the reason why. They're going to not be as patient, and oftentimes they're not going to spend the amount of time it takes in order to get better.
Beautiful.
From there. So a couple things that I guess we've worked on, I know I have, is staying consistent every single visit.
Yes.
Either attaching their goals to like a travel card and to something that they have that you can document on what their case is, just so you can keep them entertained with not only conversations relating to that goal, but also to keep them engaged mentally and knowing that it's going to take a long road. It's going to take some time for them to build that up, not only habit-wise, but also to get better. So I think for their re-exams are very, very important, or oftentimes that comes with like the 4th week of treatment, or if there's a change in condition that they may have, and just reassessing that, talking one-on-one, seeing where they are at that time, and then for them building up their confidence of what they're able to do at that time, and then see if you can push them as they get better, especially as pain starts to decrease, and trying to fill that gap of, oh, I can't do anything, I'm in pain. What that is that time spent, and then what can they fill that in as? And then not only that, like if their schedule is busy, but they're still in pain, what are certain things that they could do in their everyday life, such as, for example, folding laundry and doing air squats, or dishes and standing on one leg.
Absolutely.
It's just those small things that I think can help them progress, but meeting them where they're at and then trying to keep up with their goals, and if it changes, have them let you know. But I guess, Doc, what have you noticed with that patient care-wise?
Absolutely, and I love that the way you brought up re-exams, and I love that you brought up laundry and air squats, because both of those are great, because of course re-examining is important. And I think one thing we do great here is using objective data. We love taking videos of patients before and afters, and that is so crucial, because I know sometimes what happens is you forget how bad you were, or you forget from where you come from, and that's with any goal. You start the year out, you're hitting that gym, you're doing great, you're eating well, and if you didn't track where you were in the beginning of the year, halfway through, you just lose sight of where you started if you aren't tracking that. And so what I think how this may translate to people's habits for sure is just keep track, so you can visually see how you're doing as well. Either visually by writing it down and tracking it in a calendar or journal, or visually by taking a picture, video of yourself, maybe every week, every month, just so you can start seeing those changes. That's going to be crucial, because I do know we'll have times where patients will come in and they have been doing so great, and then on an off day they're like, gosh, I just don't know if I'm doing well, or if I haven't been doing that great. And we'll throw up a video of them and where they were versus where they are now, and they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that's how good that I've come. And so again, it's just helpful reminders to yourself. We are our own worst critics. It's just making sure to remind yourself to say, hey, I have come this far, I am doing this good, and you need that little reminder every once in a while. Touching on the laundry and the air squats, I don't know how many times I take a break during my Netflix videos or movies to do push-ups, man. Like,
that's a good call.
I do. I'm trying to do, I started off, let's say a year or two ago, on kind of my bulking journey, getting some more weight. And I would say I've only missed maybe 30 days in the year of how many push-ups, like 100 to 200 push-ups a day I try to do,
beautiful.
just to keep myself feeling good before I go to the gym and things like that. But it's just something to change pace and make myself feel like I can still sit down, enjoy some things, but go ahead and focus on some of the other things in life, especially fitness goals too. So the other day, I was just about to get into my Netflix movie, and I quickly did 100 push-ups, and I said, perfect, I got that done, sat down, enjoyed the movie. But yeah, there are ways that you can still fit in some activity. And when you do it, you have to be okay with knowing that you just did only maybe 20 to 50 push-ups, but it's still okay. What I find a lot of people do is they think that if they didn't make it to the gym, that was a failure.
Yeah.
And that's not true, because we are busy and we need to figure out more efficient ways to add in some activity. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like you said, 10, 20 air squats while you're doing laundry, that is progress. That is improvement. And so these are the kinds of things that I think we're going to give you shortly on some tools and ways that you can feel good about adding in activity and making it seem as though making it to the gym or doing a 2-hour workout isn't necessarily going to be A to B. There's got to be steps, including progress to get there, and making sure you still feel good about the kind of progress that you're doing at the time while you're patiently getting. Of course, you're going to want to get to the 2-hour workouts. You're going to want to look, lean and buff. But it's consistency, like you touched on, that's going to get you where you need to go this year, and that's great because it's kind of moving towards our next graphs here. And so, Forbes also asked, how many resolutions are you planning on setting for 2024? And so the most common was 2 to 3. And I love this graph because Doc and I have a disagreement on maybe where you should start or how can you start these resolutions. I thoroughly believe that if you're going to start a huge habit, that maybe you should just stick to one. Doc, I know you have some difference of opinion.
I think you could start with one, but you can start with multiple at the same time. I think either one would be ideal as long as you're moving in the right direction. However, with starting multiple habits, I'll kind of just touch on my point of view. So with this, like let's say, for example, with the big one that we know with fitness, and we can touch on finances, but I'd probably leave that up to a financial expert more so than us, or at least myself. But moving forward in terms of fitness, a lot of times that's just getting the ambition to get into the gym or get into a bout of effort, exercise, workouts. So let's say you have to find the time. So you have to find waking up early in the morning or finding a time at the nighttime. So there's two things that you have to ingrain into your schedule, not only the barrier of going into effort, but also the time. Let's say we want to add on diet as well. So how can we attach something small as like any nutrition after the exercise? Let's stay with these two between exercise and diet, and what are the small things that you can implement along your everyday life to try and ingrain some of these habits. Let's say we found ourselves at the gym, or we found ourselves just even on the ground doing push-ups, air squats. And a lot of times it's just a change of setting or scenery to find yourself, break down a barrier of like, okay, like I can do this. Now it's actually doing the work. Now after the work's been done, so how can we best fuel our body? There's a point in time to where there's going to be certain areas of taste buds are more or less wanting liquid. Water would be perfect. Now that's where what's best for you and your body and your system to rebuild and to come back to homeostasis or a level, if we will. And that's where, okay, let's say we want to increase the water intake. We want to have a bit of protein, meat, vegetables if you're vegetarian. There's a bunch of different aspects with that, but what can you increase your likelihood after the work bout so you can combine both of those together? Now that's maybe true not every single day, but if you look at week to week, how many days a week do you want to accompany these goals? For most people, you're almost going to need at least 5 to 6 days a week to keep up with the consistency over a long period of time instead of 3 to 4 days a week. I think that's where another small gets thrown into the situation that is not often brought up. If we're going to create automaticity or with goals, it's pretty much we're creating neuroplasticity, which is just firing of nerve circuits depending on your experience and habits. And that's where once you find yourself rewiring certain connections over and over again, you find yourself easier going into those bouts of activities. Yep. So again, we're going to go back into this a little bit more in the literature, but that's how I feel like we can connect multiple different habits together in a time frame or a setting to also improve the one's life. And
it's not necessarily multiple habits, but more a chain, right?
Yes.
Like try to take a habit and then chain directly off that habit. And then that is where multiple habits can maybe be formed at once because you're doing them in chronological order of themselves.
If we can.
Yeah, which now that makes more sense because I do think a lot of the times if you can only be focusing on that mental energy at that time versus having to think of a new habit in the morning and then a new habit in the night, that might be a little bit more difficult. But you go to the gym, you intake more water, and then of course you choose to have a healthy meal right after the workout.
Yes.
Those 3 in a row can then be done more consistent. Okay, so that's all right. We'll get for most humans, and I think I'm speaking for most people because I've just seen this with patients, I've seen this with family, I've seen this with friends, and I've seen this with myself. If you're going to make a crucial change to your daily routine, I've found if you can just stick with one to start, it is usually less to bite off, and it is a lot less difficult to focus on more than one. And really what I'm saying is, when you tend to juggle more things at once, there's more things up in the air that's potential to fall. I know there have been times where I was like, okay, I need to be in that gym 5 to 6 days a week. I need to be meal prepping and eating a pre-cooked meal 3 times a day, which means I also have to meal prep beginning of the week. I want to make sure I take my supplements every single day. I want to make sure that I can journal and take care of my mental health every single day. And what I found was when I did all of those things at once, let's say I got off to a rocky start at one point and there was just not, I needed to bring all of these habits back into my life because I was just, med school studying. Next thing you know, you had only time to sleep and study is what it felt like. So I was like, okay, I need to reset. And I know juggling more habits for me, what ended up happening was I usually only stuck with one anyway, or all of them just failed over time. So what I did was I stuck with one habit, and I also told myself that it was okay that the other habits are not being looked at right now. Yes, I am meal prepping every single day. That was the one that I started with. I just meal prepped for every meal of my day, and I didn't get into the gym. And I didn't journal, and I didn't focus on anything else. I just focused on if I could at least eat some pre-cooked healthy meals, that alone is already better than where I was the month prior. Yes, I wanted to get into that gym, and yes, I wanted to focus on other points of my life, but I also knew that if I couldn't consistently maintain this habit, it wouldn't matter anyway. So I think most people, you start more simply, it's a lot easier to do. So that's how I would recommend you do it. But the way Dr. Jace explained, maybe chaining off habits, that's beautiful too. So whichever way you want to get started, I think both are important to think about. And all we would recommend underlying all of that is consistency. If you can't consistently do it, then you're already going to be, set up for failure, and we don't want that because we know how it goes when you are kicking butt for 2 to 3 months and it gets to that point and you start to fall off and it doesn't feel good. It's miserable because that that consistency is what's going to build your results. We know that a month in the gym doesn't get you a lot of the results you're thinking about. Even 2 to 3 months in the gym, you might see some change, but where you're looking to see change is at that 6 month to a year mark. We know that's where the image and the change and the physiological change even is going to come over time. So it's going to be that consistency. And with that, we're going to jump into the third one, and that was, how long do resolutions usually last? They asked people, and the most common was 2 to 3 months. So I think I kind of just touched on that. Doc, did you want to touch on that at all?
So with that, especially when you make a New Year's resolution, I was thinking on this a little bit over the last few days. So for myself, from personal experience speaking on, it was diet. It was definitely the sugary foods, the candy. I've had up and down spurts with that throughout my whole life. I think some of the bigger barriers that when you look at the calendar as a whole, just even to make it to May, June, July, a lot of it's going through, okay, where are the biggest holidays in the way? And for the first off, it was Valentine's Day, okay? So that's where you have the candy hearts. That's where you have some of the sweets that you have to overcome just even that day and the leading up of that day, especially when you see everything in the grocery store. And it's tough, even for us who try to stay active and try to stay healthy and fit. There's always those temptations that come in from past experiences, emotions. So getting through Valentine's Day is one. Next one is Easter. And that often accompanies with, again, the stuff in the stores. And then it's after that, you get to like the 4th of July when you have a lot of times for most people beers, especially as you're older in age, over 21, obviously. So once you get to about that time frame, you're going to find yourself, if you've made it this far, like Dr. Addy said, after about 4, 6 months, 8 months or so, things are going to become a lot easier to get into. And some of that, I'll kind of go back to a few points, and the reasons why that is there's a couple things that are going on neurological wise and brain connection wise that when you look at building up habits, there's a few structures that are involved. One of which is a small area in the brain known as the hippocampus, and that's where memory feeds through to the neocortex, and those work together. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is what's called these MDMA receptors, and those are ones that you find on the neurons between synapses or neurons. So more or less they found, this is through Donald Hebb's work, so he found that the activation in these MDMA receptors going into a habit or right before and at the end. So he looked at it as sequencing of putting a habit and chunking it in place, or quotations, if we will, around an activity. That's something that's, when you look at building up habits, you want to look at not only just the habit itself, but also the activities going into the habit and then out of the habit. And that's where, if you want to strengthen those connections to make habits much easier for you to get into, that's where you want to, either one, there's visualization, either the night before, like let's say there's something stressful, or for students that would be like you want to be able to study. You want to visualize what is the setting in which I'm going to walk into, what am I going to do, how am I going to feel sitting into it. Oftentimes it's going to come with some stress, anxiety, not wanting to do it. So just even visualizing that, visualizing the flipping of the pages, going through each page, not necessarily focusing on the material at that time, but of the process of. Then you want to look at, okay, so after I get done going over all this material, what's, I guess, the time frame that you want to spend with that? But more importantly, as you end the habit, how am I going to pack up my bag to leave the library, let's say, or leave my room, and what does that look like? And then visualizing that whole step of sequences together will help strengthen the MDMA receptor and also certain aspects of the hippocampus, neocortex, midbrain, and then there's also an area of the basal ganglion, to where that says that either you want to go into effort or you want to go into this activity, or you should stop. So it's, I kind of like this one with kind of how Dr. Andrew Huberman put it into place. It's either the go or no-go receptors. It's either they're activated and you take action either mentally, physically, or you don't. And then that's the concept between these receptors in the brain that you can find yourself in. So just even on the neurological aspect, you can rewire your brain. So I thought that was very, very fascinating. We can kind of touch on breaking habits at the end portion where we get into some other tools as well. And then also to stay on the same topic of bracketing schedules and habits, we can even incorporate this into what's known as task bracketing, or a lot of people would look at this as a time block calendar or planner. And this is kind of one that I found fascinating with Elon Musk.
I love time blocking.
Getting into.
I love time blocking.
Have you used that before?
I do. I love time blocking.
That's awesome, man.
It's definitely the only way that I've now, as my time has gotten shorter in my day, that I can efficiently manage my day. And it's down to, at sometimes, the minute. And it's crazy to think that you're time blocking your day to the minute. It may even seem a little extreme. But what I found was I'm doing these things anyway. Like, you don't realize how routine a human is. You really don't. I think it was Jordan Peterson. He had talked about how this, even just sitting down at your dinner table with your family or whoever for an hour a day, you don't think of that as to be like a big part of your day. It's just, I have supper with my, with whoever I have, or even just be yourself. You eat your meal and you go about your day. But that's something you do every single day, and that's something you will continue to do every single day, and that will make up about 8% of your life. Now, if you take 15 habits similar to that, that is about 100% of your life away from sleeping. And that's crucial to think about. It's like just those 15 crucial things that you're going to do every day is going to make up your life. 15 things. You'd think that there is a lot more that's going to go into your day, but there isn't. So then you need to start thinking about, how do you time block those 15 things to get the most out of your day? And I know a lot of times repetition can become boring, but you're doing it anyway. I mean, when you truly take a look at your day, and I recommend and encourage you to do this, take a look at your day. You will find that you, as a creature of habit, already time blocked. You already did it. You woke up, you had the same cup of coffee that you always have, or you bought it somewhere. You went to the same job that you've been going to. The job and the day was similar. You come home, you make the same meal or a similar meal that you've had. You've spent time with the same people that you typically have. You watch the show that you typically watch or watch similar shows. You go to bed in that same bed. That is your day, whether you want to argue with it or not. And so it's, okay, how do I take the other parts in that day to add in or change a habit? And how can I do that consistently so that I can either form that new habit or take away a habit that you don't want? So yes, I love time blocking.
That's beautiful. And I want to just jump off that too. Like, all humans only have 24 hours in a day.
Yep.
And exactly like you said too, I mean, I take this on to you guys. Like, let's say I want you to write down or challenge yourself more or less of what are the common things you find yourselves doing, and keep that. We're going to touch on that in a little bit, because I think that's incredibly important, and that's something that you can utilize to build off of or take away from and break down those habits. Either you like or dislike those two. But even going into like the psychological aspect of fears and how to move past those. I know Doc and I were touching on this before we started today. He has some awesome points on this one. So Doc, how can you break down some of those fears, and what are they for most people?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have similar fears. If you've spoken with your friends and families, or just people you've talked to, you'd be surprised at how many similar fears you all have. And I think I can name a few. Fear of the unknown, right? Fear of not knowing what is going to happen, and that can be overwhelming, especially if you enjoy routine and you enjoy knowing what's about to happen and you enjoy control. Fear of the unknown is scary for you. Or fear of failure. Nobody likes to fail. I don't think there's one person on this earth, and maybe other than Gary Vee, who likes to fail. And liking to fail, it's not necessarily like you enjoy it, but when you can take failure, learn from it, and use it to push you forward, it is a beautiful relationship. We might touch on that in a later podcast, but fear of failure. And then I think fear of what other people think of you is probably one of the most common. I mean, that's huge, right? You only want to help people. You only want to let others see you as someone who is there for you, helping you. Just, friendships, relationships, absolutely. You never want to let anyone down. So fear of what other people think of you is huge. That one for me, I actually have some relatableness too. I been sober for almost, coming up on April 14th will be 9 years.
Woo!
So, I mean,
Let's go.
when I first started to stop drinking, that's all I thought about, coming from the Midwest where it is very common to share a beer with loved ones.
Yes.
I mean, that's culture. We share drinks with each other, and we break bread, and that is just, I mean, that's daily. And so there was always fear that I was going to be looked at as well, why wouldn't you do that with me? Well, why don't you want to get a beer? Why would you never want that? I mean, who would not want to have a beer with you, someone else? I mean, it's like you are going against the way you were raised. And so even just overcoming that simple fear is definitely going to be a barrier, especially getting into the gym. I know I was just actually about to make a post the other day, and I was going to talk about the word courage and what courage is going to mean to you when you walk into 2024. And for most people, I would define it as this. I mean, courage is going to be stepping foot into that gym for the first time, knowing you're going to maybe look like a fool and not knowing what you're doing. That is fear of everything. That's the fear of the unknown, fear of what other people think of you, a fear of failure, right? Courage is going to be continuing to pick up those weights, knowing that you aren't going to see results that day. It's going to take time and over time and over time. And you're not going to see results until you do it 60 to 120 to 300 times. That's courage. Courage is looking in that mirror, knowing this might be the most out of shape you've ever been. And you're just looking at yourself and you're thinking, how did I get to where I'm at? I need to do better. It's just, you almost feel like you're in this rut and you can't get out of it. Courage is stepping foot forward after looking at yourself. That is courage. Courage is not stepping foot on Instagram for the 900th time with your big muscles. Look, a lot of those people have been doing it for 10 to 15 years. The reason they look that way is because they've been doing it for so long. And so they have nothing against you. They've just been doing it longer, and they've gotten over the barrier of fear, and they've been able to do it. So the psychology of it is being able to get over those fears. And for me, one of the most helpful ways was to using my goals to break down my fear. So whenever I had a fear, or I started to have negativity come into my mind, or I had any bit of scaredness or fear, I would whip out my goal book. And I would look at the goals that I made, and I said affirmations to myself. And I said, I am going to do that. I am going to do that. I am going to get into the gym. I am going to stop drinking. I am going to focus on the parts of my life that are important. I'm going to have this once this is done. And I just reiterated that to myself. And so anytime, and I did, there was times where when I was first starting drinking or quitting drinking, and again, I want to preface, it's a lot more difficult for others who obviously have, addictive tendencies like myself. I was in rehab. I have a struggle with addiction, and I have a struggle with even just habits in general. So definitely want to preface that if you are struggling in that form, please go and seek professional help. But if you feel that, these are just habits over time that you want to kick, whether that's, smoking or, what have you, what is helpful for me is when that negativity comes in, focusing on the positive, focusing on the goals that you have in front of you, and continuing just to give yourself positive feedback, positive reinforcement that, hey, I am not where I'm at right now, but I'm going to get there. That was super helpful for me to eliminate that fear and negativity out of my mind. And number two, it was surrounding myself with other people who had that reinforcement and support for myself. So, when you're back home with family and friends, and you are getting that offer to share a beer, it's going to be more difficult. If you're choosing to get to that gym and you're not around people who maybe want to go to the gym, it's going to be more difficult. If you are trying to lose weight and eat a healthier diet, but you're only around people that's going to choose maybe just less healthy food or foods that you don't want to eat, it's going to be more difficult. So another thing that was crucial for me to pass that barrier was surrounding myself with people that had similar mindsets and similar goals. You will always have that when you have support from others. It's just easier to get through those kinds of things. So I would definitely say those are two big ones for me. Doc, psychology of barriers, breaking down barriers.
Oh gosh, that's perfect.
Yeah, what do you think?
And I just want to give a whole bunch of respect that just even that you said that out loud. I know you've been almost 9 years, which is that's something that people can look up to. I think that's something that I could get goosebumps just even thinking about it, because the amount of stress and the barriers you've had to go through over a period of time is tremendous. Not only from probably, I'm sure, family standpoint, but friends, and just even breaking the culture in terms of what you've been able to go through. And I kind of want to jump on that. Like, a lot of it is mental. And going back to a few of the other points that Dr. A started making is, when you go back into the gym, a lot of it's mental, a lot of it's understanding that a lot of people are in the same boat you are in terms of, like, let's say walking into the gym and then continuing that, going back to the courage. Like, a lot of the people that you might look up to that have the physique or the build, they've been at it for a while, obviously, they're consistent with it. But everyone else around there that might be in the same path you are, that's okay. Everyone has their own journey, and I feel like you can't judge someone on where they're at in their journey, because oftentimes if you are already up there, you've had to go through that. You've had to go through that experience. So it's all where we're at in that journey, and just mentally understanding that helps tremendously on your path moving forward. I think that's the biggest one for me in terms of breaking down the fears, is understanding that, yes, when we first started the podcast and when we first started speaking out loud and giving more information, especially with all the knowledge that we have and our ambition to help as many people as possible, I think there's other more important factors involved that are pushing us in that direction, to where the fear aspect, we can kind of block that out a little easier as well. So
I love that. It's so true. I mean, we are here, first podcast right now. I'm sure we both have some thoughts in our mind, but like, I love that what you had just said. Our mission of this podcast far exceeds the fears that we have with it. And I think mental, when you bring up, that's got to be what you think to yourself every morning. It's, I am about to step into a new world, and I'm going to have fears, and it's okay to have fears. It's okay to feel silly. It's okay to feel like you don't know what you're doing. It's okay to get into that gym thinking you may feel like a newbie, like a rookie.
Yes.
It's okay. And we can only give you this idea. From what I'm hearing, a lot of people tell me is they just don't know what to do. There's plenty of resources anywhere you go you can look up to feel a little bit more comfortable, but you have to have a fundamental mission, a fundamental goal mentally before you get all of this started. Something that can help push past those fears. And so I guess I was just going to retouch on that a little bit. If the goal and mission far exceeds the fear, then you will by far beat that out.
That's perfect. No, and I think moving forward, just stay with the consistent aspect. I know one thing that we didn't bring up yet is in terms of visualization of what the goal is, what the habit is that you want to form in. For you is your notebook. For some people it might be their screensaver on their phone. Some people it might be a cutout of
visual boards, right?
Paper, visual board on your mirror. Just to mentally engage with those words of whatever goal, habit you want to form, and how to stay consistent with that. We're trying to give you as many applications that you can utilize in your everyday process.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I guess going more into the tools that you can use to learn in terms of like making and breaking habits, I think that's something that is important that we can get into as well. One of which, I guess, habit strength. So when you look at a habit in terms of the strength is the consistency. So if you know you have a strong habit, you're very consistent with it. You oftentimes can bring your identity into the factor. Like, let's say someone that does ultra marathons or Tough Mudders or Spartan races, they're a marathoner. Like, they're someone who identifies as of the activity. So I think that's fascinating. So if you want to become whatever, or a person that has a strong habit of whatever you're trying to look at, either one of tailoring certain formations and habits and tendencies that of that person. So almost like a role model in terms of what you can do and how you can achieve it. But I wouldn't try to necessarily, for mental health purposes, say that I want to become this person or attach yourself to a celebrity or this person, because you are your own individual and we all
Yes.
have different paths in life. So
Yes.
just making that clear itself. Now, in terms of building up habits and kind of going back to my point of that you can combine multiple habits, there's one aspect in terms of painting one habit that you already have. Let's say oftentimes, well, most people that brush their teeth in the morning, at night. What is something that you can do either right after or during the habit of brushing your teeth, so you can add another one on? And I think that's where, once you get back to the brain and rewiring those connections, fire together, wire together. Once you start building those off one another, like let's say I want to work out or I want to meditate before sleep so I can get better sleep. Maybe I'm sitting down, brushing my teeth, or standing there, eyes closed, visualization of what tomorrow would bring, or going through the processes of what your day was as you're brushing your teeth. But combining a habit that you already have to something else that you want. It might be time specific in terms of night, morning, lunch. I think that's very, very important. Now, the same can be true in terms of breaking off a habit. Again, we want to go back to the MDMA receptors. To weaken that signal, that's often where you perform a habit that you don't want, or like if you want to quit smoking, first recognizing that you completed or you're in that state. Second off, mentally visualizing the steps on which you found yourself in that habit, I think is incredibly important. And then third, you want to attach a different habit behind or after that in a small time frame. Oftentimes, if it's something positive, it's much easier for you to complete, whether that's something so small, whether that's taking, you notice that you're smoking, you want to stop. Obviously, you don't want to continue on smoking. Either drop the cigarette, e-cig, what have you with that. Visualizing, how did I find myself in this spot? And then second off, maybe something easy, breathing exercise. So maybe a double inhale, exhale. And then find yourself in terms of changing the setting. Those are two important ways that you can either build up the habit, break down habit, but it takes consistency a lot, which what Doc said as well too. So do you have any experience?
I do,
with
and
that?
obviously one of the big ones, one of the biggest, I would say, to start to my life was quitting drinking. That was by far the most crucial point to my habit journey. Now that I look back in my life, I found that once I started figuring out, my addictive tendencies, and I started to kind of look back on my life, and I already had a lot of addictive tendencies that I didn't even realize before, I kind of got into this journey. I used to play video games for 16 hours a day. I loved carbs and sugar. Those are just things that, and I was very competitive, and I hated losing. I had aggressive tendencies. So breaking habits for me has become easier as I have continued to break them. But what I do find is, and it's going back to even forming habits for me, one at a time was by far more effective than trying to do multiple at once. So when I first started to quit drinking, I did notice that I had to substitute. It was just very, very hard for me if I didn't. So instead of drinking alcohol, I drank soda. And it's definitely, you're thinking, of course, well, that's not good for you either. Well, of course it's not. But for me, alcohol was something that I needed to get rid of in my life. And so I chose to substitute that with soda. I got to another point in my life where I said, okay, I gotta get rid of soda. Okay, I gotta substitute it. So I substituted it for tea, and tea has some caffeine, but what I did finally end up finding out about myself was it was carbonation that I liked the most. And so I drink sparkling water all day, like all day. If I go out to eat, it's a sparkling water. I'll have a club soda with lime. I mean, You get me them all day long, club soda with lime. And I have found that helps curb my want for carbonation, and it's water. And so, there really isn't much to it. So that is what, for me, helped. And I know a lot of people out there, before they just get into breaking a habit, it might even be substituting a habit, where you have something, and smoking is probably going to be a big one of that. It's like, okay, instead of cigarettes, maybe I've heard of even these air vapor cigarettes, where it's the feeling of smoke against your cheeks that maybe stimulates something in your brain where you're actually not getting the carcinogens and the nicotine. So you inhale the vapor and you can breathe it out. I think it's just water.
Yes.
And it's just mimicking the effects that you typically get with the activity without actually receiving the full activity. So for me, it was just carbonation. Beer was carbonated, soda was carbonated. I didn't actually drink those. I was just drinking sparkling water, but it makes a difference for me. So if you're going to break a habit, not to say you can't cold turkey break a habit, but substituting may be something you want to think about as well. And then, of course, just sticking to one at a time. So when I was, I had other habits that I wanted to take care of at the beginning of years, or if I was just sinking down and trying to get at my habits, I did. I stuck to one, and I stuck to only one, and I kept the other habits in my routine. I didn't want them in there, but I kept them in there, because if you try to change too much at once, I do think you just the body just ends up, the brain is a survival mechanism. It brings you back to comfort. It just continues to bring you back. It doesn't like change. If for some reason you were, happy and fed in your home, and your brain is like, you are comfortable, you have a roof over your house, you are well fed, why the heck would you want to get up off of this couch and go for a run? Your brain is literally telling you that. It's saying, you are safe here. You are in your home. You are fed. There are lions out there. There are saber-toothed tigers out there. Why the heck would you want to get up and go run? Your brain is literally feeding that information to you every single time you do something. So if you need to break that, you have to get over the mental state of it. You have to tell yourself, I am doing this for the betterment of myself, and you need to tell your brain to F off. Yes. Basically, that's what you need to do.
Point.
So yeah, that's my take on breaking habits. I've broken many habits over many years. It definitely did not come where I took 1 year of my life and broke every single bad habit. That for sure has not happened, and it still hasn't happened. I still have things that I'm working on, and I will continue to work on myself. You need to give yourself grace. You need to realize that I almost see it as, I know at one point in my life that I'm going to get to where I want. And as long as I can continually strive 1% every day to get there, I will get there. And if I feel like I have a deadline of, okay, if I'm not where I want at the end of the year, then I will deplete my momentum. Because if I get to that year point and you didn't finish the goals that you wanted, that's not the mentality you want. When I set goals for the year, I set goals to fail. I do. I set 25 goals, and if I end up actually completing all or most of them, I didn't set hard enough goals for myself. But if I pass about 60%, 70% of them, then I set the appropriate amount of strength of intensity of goals. And of course, if I set 25 goals and I only completed 2 of them, well, then maybe my goals are a little far-fetched, and I need to maybe try to take it in more baby steps than shoot from A to B. So that's kind of what I have with as far as breaking habits, for sure.
That you're shooting for the stars, but you might end up in the clouds. You're still moving in the right direction. However, I want to touch on the points that you made. I'm thinking, okay, what is something that can kind of encompass everything you said in terms of breaking down, from the cigarettes to just the water vapor e-cigs to nothing at all, or was it from beer to soda to carbonated water? I looked at that as walking downstairs, like the walking downstairs effect. Well, let's coin that right now. That'd be a pretty good one. So in terms of taking steps down, as long as you're moving in the right direction, that's beautiful.
Yeah, because nobody's going to
awesome.
jump from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs. Absolutely, you'd hurt yourself. No.
Ooh, walking down stairs effect. That's cool. Now, as we build on top of this, we want to go into how can we best stick with mental fitness goals, and that's where a lot of aspects terms of apps can be utilized. I'll touch on one myself. I use the Whoop band. I've had it for over 4 years now. It's something that breaks down sleep,
Yep.
tendencies,
I
the
love it.
strain on your body. There's built-in calendars, calculators, so you can kind of monitor the amount of stress your body goes into. There's anywhere from heart rate variability to the resting heart rate. It monitors a lot of that aspects, not only in terms of activity, mental stress. So that's something that I would highly encourage people to utilize. However, it's a band.
I've used the Whoop band, and I
Yes.
love the Whoop band.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe just touch a little bit on how it works and
Yes.
what some of the effects that you found from it? Because I do love it, and I'll touch on that right after.
Oh, that's perfect. I found myself trying to get into activities and workout, but also to monitor my strain level. So when we're adjusting people as chiropractors on pretty much 5-6 days of the week, you can find yourself possibly overtraining, overworking yourself. So in terms of monitoring the strain on the body, I found that very, very valuable. You can look at the time spent sleeping and what is your recovery rate from that, not only from day to day, but also week to week. They also have trackers and graphs on a month-to-month and a year-by-year basis, so you can track everything. So I really like that aspect to it. There's other variabilities in terms of different colors matching outfits. We got something from Christmas for my wife to kind of hang up all the Whoop bands so I can match my outfit. So I thought that was kind of
I love
fascinating.
that. But that was kind of touching a little bit on identity, like you said
Yes.
that. You're making it a part of yourself. It's accessory. It's a part of you. I mean, that can be huge. And I actually was going to touch on this is, if you're about to get into the gym, go feel free to buy some nice active wear. I mean, feel like, okay, I'm about to get up, go to the gym, but at least I get to put on my new active wear and kind of linchpin habits like you were talking about. Okay, you're going to wake up, you're going to try something new, you have new clothes. Well, you're already there, you're already putting on new clothes, you might as well get into the gym after that. So yeah, I like
down the
that's cool.
barriers.
That's really cool.
So that's something I'd recommend. The only negative part with this, there's no watch time, which that's kind of a thing itself, or something that you can monitor and track your fitness levels. Like Nordic, they have awesome bands and straps. Like there's a bunch of different resources that you can find to keep you moving into the identity of the habit or your pursuit of the habit.
And that's exactly what I loved with Whoop. So I had a Whoop for about a year. Kind of going back to objective data, being able to see change is so huge for people. Like if you could fast forward to 6 months in your life, let's say you stuck consistently with working out. If you got to see what you looked like in 6 months, you would do it. Like you would do it. You would say, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going to look like in 6 months if I just stick to it. It is such a game changer. So objective data was huge for me. I had trouble sleeping. I've always had trouble sleeping. So I used Whoop for sleep. What I was able to do, and if you're not familiar with Whoop, what you can do is you can let the app give you questions at the end of the day, and you can choose from hundreds of questions for it to ask you. And you usually answer yes or no, or you sometimes just fill in a number. And what I did was I took about 10 questions and I had Whoop ask me that every night. I went to bed. I was on my phone anyway. I went into my Whoop app. I answered my questions. It took me like 20 seconds. I slept and it monitored how my sleep was. And what it does is it's like, okay, some of the questions were, did you consume caffeine that day? Did you exercise that day? Did you have sex that day? These are all the questions that you can just have it ask you. And at the end of the month, it correlated how well you slept with the objective data that you gave it. So for me, I found out that it was three main things. It was when I consumed caffeine, I slept not as good. When I exercised, I slept better. And when I was having sex routinely, I slept better. Those were my three. So those are obviously huge mental positive things where I'm taking out caffeine, I'm exercising, I'm having sex. Oxytocin releases when you have sex and it helps to calm you down. So yeah, they all made sense to me. I already knew that as a doctor anyway, that those would probably be helpful. But to see it visually, it made such a difference. So yeah, no, definitely something that I would recommend for sure.
And that's where you can kind of tailor it to your personal habit or your personal self, and it can individualize how specific to a person that it can be. And that's where I love that you brought that up in terms of the other questions, because yeah, that's something that I utilize not on a daily basis, even though I should, and that's something that I want to strive towards. Is there any other apps that you have, or we can go into diet?
I've used a bunch of apps. For me, I don't have a lot of habit apps right now. I know there are some good ones. Yeah, I can only give recommendations based off of what I've heard. I know we're going to get into diet and fitness soon, so I'll maybe save them for that. But as far as mental app goes, I know Calm is one that I think a lot of people use. It's just a guided meditation app. It takes the work out of it, because a lot of the times getting things prepped to do something is half the battle.
Yes.
So these are already on there for you. You just click the button, you close your eyes, and they put you through a guided meditation. I've used that along with me and my girlfriend. We've done that. Sometimes we'll wake up and we start our day with meditation. So she'll nudge me and she's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And she puts the guided meditation on. Sometimes I fall back asleep. Sometimes I stay awake through the meditation. It doesn't really matter. It's failing through until you get there. At least as long as you're trying every day, that's what's most important. So yeah, fail through it. Do that meditation. Whether you did it really well or whether you didn't, you still did it. Cross it off your list and go about your day. And that's another thing I'm sure we maybe missed or touched on was, when you're in that gym and it's not a good workout day, just get past it. There are not days you're gonna walk in there, you're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, another good pump day." It's like, no, some days you're putting up that weight and you're like, "I don't want to be here." But it's not every day is like on Instagram where you're just feeling the flow and there's music everywhere and it's a good vibe. It's like that's not reality. I mean, you're gonna have those days which are great, but there are days where you're there and you're like, "I'm just ready for bed." But you're gonna push yourself through it. Do the best you can. Some days you leave early. You don't finish all the sets and reps that you had planned to do. That's okay. Show up, try your best. That's definitely it's a crucial part of habits as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now moving into diets.
Diet.
Because we touched on fitness now just as equally as diet. And I know, Doc, I know you have a lot of areas and topics I want you to go into, because that'll bring so much wealth of knowledge. For me, looking at diet, a lot of it comes from how do you get the resources and supplying your house properly. That's where when you first start off in the grocery store, you probably have heard this many times, ideally walk around the edge of the store instead of the aisles. You'll find most of the fresh produce. You'll find some of the healthier alternatives in terms of dairy, some meats around the edges, and then just possibly sticking to those. You can get into other meals and whatnot down the lanes, but I think for most people, if you want to start off by anything diet related wise, I guess start off just the edge portion of the store. Don't even try to set foot in the aisles. When I was starting to go back into trying to eat healthier in the past, this is the plan and route I took going into the store. And then depending on how well you do, you'll find yourself coming home with, "This is all I got." But if you utilize those materials, that's what only helps set you up for positive success moving forward. So I think that is awesome topic that not many people touch on, but I guess, Doc, I'd love to hear your perspective on
We know
diet.
what's in the middle aisles. It's processed food. I mean, we'll probably get to a podcast later that's going to touch on the sad diet, processed food, all that. We don't have that kind of time today, but no, I think it's crucial. I do go into the grocery stores, and that's the first place I go to, man, produce. And for some of you that have a tough time eating, vegetables, I'm not a big veggie guy, but I mean, meat, whether or not you believe it, meat is good for you, and it's not going to give you a heart attack, especially if it's not processed meat. But that's great. For me, it's making sure that I have prepped meals. So back to preparation, ready to attack the habit. Prepped meals for my week so that I know, one, I won't be spending money on food, and two, eating food that probably isn't as good for me as that prepped meal. So it does hit a lot of things. And I know finances was a big resolution this year, just attacking finances. Obviously, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but I'll tell you what, I can assure you, if you prepare and cook more home cooked meals, it's gonna be better on your budget too. So for me, I definitely attack it that way. I'm making sure that I always have prepped meals for the week, because we know what happens when you're busy and you maybe missed a meal and your gut bugs are saying, give me some carbs, man, give me some quick foods. Arby's is right there, swing through. McDonald's, swing through. I know you guys know it when you're on your way home and you're starving and you're like, all right, I got that. I gotta work when I get home. I just got done with an 8-hour workday, and now I gotta work even more when I get home to prepare a meal. It's so much easier to have it ready for you, so you can stick it in a skillet or a microwave, and it's ready there for you. So
to touch on that too, I guess, what's your process of setting up the meals for the week? Because I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people could benefit from that.
yeah, no,
the
I
process.
appreciate you bringing that up too. So for me, again, it's simplicity is always helpful, because the more work that I have to do, I'm lazy. I mean, I am. My girlfriend would say it. She's like, I cannot believe how lazy you are in some parts of your life. She's like, you've done all these things, but you're so lazy. And then I am. I eat the same meal almost every day, or certain meals almost every day. And I know that's not for everyone, but for me, it works. And so most of my meals are rice-based or sweet potato-based is kind of my bottom. And then I throw another veggie or something on top of that, and then I throw meat on top of that. It's very simple. So I meal prep my rice, I bake my veggies, and I make my meat. It takes me anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to cook probably close to 5 days worth of meals. And that's for also me and another person. For families, it may take a little longer, but you can do this. And I know that there are what are called sheet pan recipes, where you put it all on a sheet, you bake it, you go and watch your show, and it's done. Like, sometimes it's the thought of doing it that can maybe scare you too, right? Fear of something new, fear of I'm gonna burn the food, fear it's a new recipe. Trust me, it's really simple. All of those things are easy to walk through with the resources online. But simplicity for me, if you need variety, then instead of just making one meal, make 2 or 3. And so you can change up the meat, change up the veggie, you can change up the base. If you need something more, you can add some sauces to it, condiments. But for sure, simplicity is gonna make it a lot easier for you when you go in to do that. And then for me, I do like to eat out.
Yes.
So you don't have to quit cold turkey. By no means do you feel like you have to only eat home cooked meals. Is a kind of like you talked about. You know that they're coming. Valentine's Day.
Yep.
You know the weekends are coming, and you know that the weekends are going to bring more difficulty, because you have more time to your schedule. You have more time to make the decisions you want when you're not. Obviously, when you're working, you're working. You're not thinking about those kinds of things. So it's like, okay, the weekend's here. Time block it.
Yes.
The weekend is no different than the weekday. Time block your weekends. Trust me, you may like, well, I don't want to prepare a weekend. I just want to do what I want to do. It's like, well, we know what you're going to do on the weekend. You're going to succumb to the same habits that you had on the weekend. So time block that weekend. Have meals prepped for the weekend, or if you're going to choose to go out, choose a place that's maybe healthier, or one that isn't as tough on the budget if you're, finance-wise. But for me, I still go out to eat because it's still something that I want. And to be honest, it's oddly enough, I eat rice and chicken a lot of the days. When I go out to eat, I eat rice and chicken. Someone can make it better than me, right? So I'm going to Yama and I'm getting pork katsu. It's pork and rice. I mean, it's kind of funny, but to me, it's still something that I want to do. It's you still got to go out and get that social part of it, and spend time with the people you love. Absolutely, and so you can still eat those kinds of things too. So yeah, that's what has helped me prepare that kind of habit and continue to hit that habit. Yourself?
And I want to touch on that aspect too. One pro tip with this one, if you're going to look to put meals together on a week-to-week basis, if you use plastic versus glass, anytime you microwave that food, you'll find less carcinogens when warmed up in the microwave glass. If you're going to do this long-term, ideally the best route is glass Tupperware.
Good investment, you're saying?
Yes.
Yep, and I use all glass. There are maybe some BPA, whatever, free plastics. Still, I would just go with glass, definitely for the long term. And they'll last longer too. Glass will last longer. But yeah, no, that was a good point.
I want to end with resolutions for us, for our goals for the year, and how we're going to go about sticking with them. Doc, if you want to go first.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll round it out.
So I typically don't do resolutions. I touched on this a little bit in the beginning. I love making goals, and I love making intentional goals.
Yes.
So we might touch on this later, but for me, what I do is I have so many categories to my goals. I have financial, I have personal, I have business, I have relationship, and I'll have spiritual, or even just, kind of some mental health stuff just on the end. So I'll make 3 to 5 goals for each of those categories. But I also will split up the goals to have 1 month goals, 6 month goals, and a year goal. Because if you're just focusing on 1 year out, it's really tough to enjoy that journey. And I know
Yes.
Doc and I, we both love Gary Vee. He talks about this a lot, is you need to enjoy the journey to enjoy the results. Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's going to be tough to get the results you want.
Absolutely.
So it's being able to cross off, okay, that 1 month goal, we hit it. Or a week goal. I mean, start small if you need to. If you really, need to feel like accomplished and productivity, then yeah, absolutely do that. So I break it down into categories. I mean, some big ones for me is going to be consistency with getting into the gym. I had been killing it for a while. I was, doing 6 days a week in the gym. Life hit, like everyone, and I got off on a week streak there. So I'm ready to get back into it. I've already been killing it. Like I said, I do 100 push-ups a day just to make me feel like I'm still doing something, even if I miss that gym setting. But 5 to 6 days in the week is in the gym is where I'm pushing for. I've gotten off on not taking my supplements every day, so I'm trying to start that back up. For me, I might use Dr. Jace's linchpin habit formation, where I need to find maybe 2 to 3 lynches off of a habit that I'm already doing in the morning. So I'm already I'm gonna think of doing that. One thing that I do every morning, no matter what, is either consume water, or I'll consume something, whether that's food, water, or a snack, just to get my day started. Who's to say that I can't do snack, vitamin? Maybe that'll be something for myself. And then the third for me, it's for sure not spreading myself too thin and focusing on more of the mental health component for me. So, I'm still thinking about whether that's meditation, maybe more hot yoga, or just something sprinkled in to where that I can actually, focus on that. And for me, I guess this is back to an app, the app talk for fitness, ClassPass. I don't know if you guys have heard of ClassPass. So ClassPass is a monthly membership where you pay a fixed amount per month and you get access to what are called these credits. And these credits can apply to all the businesses in the area. And there's a lot of businesses on this. And so what you'll find is you can pay so much a month and be able to go do Pilates at this place, a gym workout here, hot yoga here, really anywhere that places are offering like sessions and workouts. And that way you don't have to be tied down to just one place. Where if you're an Orange Theory person and you just want to do Orange Theory, that's great. But my girlfriend and I, she likes to do Pilates and she likes to do yoga. We like to switch it up. Even you can do massages on there. I think there's even chiropractic on there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a bunch on there.
A little bit of everything.
ClassPass is great if you love variety and you want to just continue to hit it there. That's what I would recommend. Doc, how about yourself? Resolutions for the year? What's it looking like?
Oh, yes. December 31st at midnight, I was sitting down on my couch, funny enough, eating candy, of course. And it was 12:15 hit, and my birthday is on December 15th. And I looked at what I was actually doing at that time and looked at myself. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I took what I was eating, threw in the garbage. I took what was in the cabinet of any of processed foods. I threw it away, and I said, okay, this might be the first year in over a decade that I might actually look to do a New Year's resolution. It's one of those to where, for me, with the candy aspect, for people from elementary school, they knew that I was a huge sugary person. I've gotten away from that over the years and it's slowly crept in. So I want to almost squash that completely. So for me, it's definitely not going to be consuming any type of candy foods the best I possibly can for years on end. And how I'm going to look about this is a reassessment of myself, ideally on about every 4 day basis. And like I said previously, those temptations are going to be coming in I find myself at nights getting up from the couch, just walking into the kitchen. I'm like, why am I even here? It's my inner neurochemicals force me into the setting, and I find myself like, why do I need this stuff? So mentally I notice that, go sit back down, but it's that constant stress of finding myself in a situation that can put me in failure, and I think recognizing that primary and then altering from there. So that's how I'm going to go about changing and maintaining that urge. Also, getting more info out to the world. I think also setting a basis, making that easier and breaking down the barriers of less stress to pretty much bring up this habit. So I'm going to look to almost record a lot of my nightly workouts, get those to social media. So pay attention for those to come. I'm going to look to do at least, I'm going to start off very nice, simple, about 2 times a week, and then build up from there. And then I also want to look to do meditation and looking at how the day was, of any mistakes, any success, and what can I visualize moving forward. And oftentimes I do that getting ready for today, so picking out the clothes, setting up my outfit, so when I wake up in the morning there's less stress, so I can kind of make sure everything moves smoothly. But mentally visualizing that as I'm laying in bed, and I want to do that on a daily basis too, not only for mental health, spiritual health, adding in a prayer as well, I think can only benefit. So those are my 3. Those are something that I want to strive towards, and in future episodes we'll kind of touch on certain habits, how we're doing, how we want to keep maintaining moving forward, especially in a few months from now when people start dipping off in terms of their habits. So that's kind of where I am for this year.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Before we end it, I just want to touch on the one. You said you threw everything out of the house so that it wasn't there. That's huge for a lot of people, especially if you're quitting something. I mean, don't give yourself access to habit. You know, just because you're in the fridge and you're looking around, and that's still going to be something you just might have to work for. But if you can't find it, you can't eat it, or you can't put it in your mouth if it's a cigarette. For me, it was alcohol. I of course had to get rid of all the alcohol in my house, so I couldn't drink it. So maybe thinking about how, if you're going to start eating healthier, what are some things you want to throw away in that fridge right now and that pantry right now, so that you can set yourself up for success when moving forward. But no, I like that. I like that you touched on that.
Yes, short-term gain, but also there's a financial component as you're throwing stuff away. That it might suck a little bit, but it's better for you in the long term.
For sure. All right, well, I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much if you stayed through this whole podcast. We really do appreciate it. This is episode 1 of the Functional Code. We're super grateful for everyone that's viewing this. And we cannot thank you enough if you're going to continue to support us. We hope that we get a like and a subscribe. Please share this with anyone that you feel is going to be a benefit. And yeah, we look to have more and more episodes coming out weekly. This is something that we've been both thinking about doing for a very long time, and it's finally here. So we are super excited to get you this content. Please, if you have any recommendations of topics, any comments on what we were talking about, any questions, please comment. Please reach out to us. We are here to help you. We are here to make you succeed and become the best versions of yourself. And so that is what we want when it comes to the Functional Code. So thank you guys so much. Please have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Woo! Yes, sir.